I love that intro. It's way better when we do it like that and just have the question up and that frustrating countdown doesn't come on.
Yeah.
Um, Friends, it's October. Welcome to Leading Through Stories. With me today, as always, is Helen Rose, who's passionate about grief, Mary Michailides, an educational leader, and of course me, Christy Wolf. I believe there is power in stories. For those of you joining us for the first time, please take a look below in the notes, and you're going to find all the information and links about why we're doing Leading Through Stories, who we are, what we're talking about. And later on, when this is the recording, it will also have all the links to things we talk about today. I also want to mention, as of last time, we figured out how to do a podcast. So the first episode of season 2 is available as a podcast, though it's not. I haven't figured out actually how to put it on like Apple or Spotify. That's like a next month problem. So, season 2, episode 2. Tell us all about it, Mary.
Thank you. And I want to clarify that Christy always says, we figured it out and we know how to put it on a podcast. I thought I did not do that. Helen,
Me either. No, it's all Christy.
Christy,
Yeah.
you did that. And thank you so much. Well, I am actually so happy to be here again. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Today, I get to talk about something called lift leadership and how that lift leadership impacts who we are and actually those around us. And that actually we can all be lifters. And we're going to be talking about that today.
So before we start, I want to tell you a little more about Mary. With her loving husband of 38 years and your 3 daughters, you are often engaged in livable activities. I love watching your posts. I'm like, where does this woman get her energy? You guys, and all your pictures just exude this family love, and it's beautiful to watch. So you do stuff like cross country, downhill biking, traveling, skiing, playing soccer. Like, really, Mary? So you have a lifelong love for learning and leading. Mary was an educator with 39 years of extensive experience as a principal, an assistant superintendent, manager with Alberta Education, and presently a leadership development facilitator in her own company. In 2017, Mary redirected her career and established mariamconsulting, which is, if you want to check out her website, we can do this later, but I'll do it quickly now, www.mariamconsulting.ca. And I don't know if you can put that up on the board, Christy. As a leadership development consultant, she supports school jurisdictions and businesses in transformative leadership practices, which assist leaders in elevating their capacity to build capacity in others. Again, how do you get that energy? Amazing.
Oh my God.
Welcome.
And before you start talking, I just want to mention that this is how I met Mary. I met her through Edmonton Public School Boards when I was a teacher and a curriculum coordinator. Is that what it was even called? That was a long time ago. And I came to one of her conferences. It was at the Banff Center, and that is the first time that I met Mary in person. So
well, in my story with Mary is I met her through you, Christy, and we were trying to decide how we want to do something. And you're like, I have the perfect person. We're going to bring her in. You're telling me all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like way out of my league with this one. We met. We have a connection. We're both Greek background, and it's like Mary just fits. She was the missing piece. Yeah.
This is such a big love-in. I'm so honored to be here, as friends and colleagues, but also, thank you, Helen. We said, oh, please don't read all of that about me. And Chrissy's going, no, people need to know. So anyway, thank you, Helen.
Absolutely. And I wish I had a different way so you weren't looking at the side of my head when I was reading, but I memorized it all. Sorry.
Part of the work that I've been doing for years, and Christy, you did mention it, that whole notion of leadership development and what does it look like? And, in our podcast, we've talked about everybody's a leader from where they stand. And part of the work is about living well to lead well. So this is the quick little, I'm wearing a pin that says live well, lead well. Everybody in the audience today is going to receive one of those pins. So we need your email address and we need for you to become active online. And along with the pin are a couple of tools and resources to help you really focus on your lift leadership, which was going to actually make us feel good about who we are, to live that wellness, to be able to be the best that we can be. So lift leadership, interesting. Why now? I had the opportunity to work with many leaders across our province, actually, and internationally. And one of the things that came to the conversation when I've received feedback was, how do we support each other now more than ever? And the COVID experience, I don't want to go there, but that we've had 2 very challenging years. Obviously, we're transitioning and trying to figure out what this is kind of looking like. People are exhausted.
Mhm.
People are running around trying to get things done. And we believe, based on many conversations, that now more than ever, we need to be lift leaders. And you're asking, well, what is a lift leader? We asked you to think about that question. We're going to come back to that. But lift leaders are really self-directed. They inspire and they encourage, and they actually kind of forge paths of innovation and improvement while building their team. And the team can be at home, it can be at work, it can be in a volunteer capacity. But as we think about what is it that we do to lift others up, today will be an opportunity to hear from you, our audience. So I want to see people chiming in. There's a question there. In what ways do you lift yourself and others up? Start putting in comments, because this is a community of learners that we are going to be actually learning from one another. It's a collective responsibility, this thing called lift leadership. And, during my series, there are a number of modules, but 2 areas that we're going to be talking about today is that notion of, how do effective listening skills actually impact our work as lift leaders? When we're talking to somebody, how do we lift them up? Or how do we lift ourselves up? And then the second piece is committing to self-reflective practice. Are we intentional about, call it what you want, being kind, being reinforcing, telling somebody something that they need to hear that they didn't expect to hear? This idea of, how are we taking care of each other? So I'm going to actually ask a question. I want to see some comments coming in. Christy, I want to ask the question, in the work that you do, how do you lift yourself up?
Myself first?
Yourself. Your
Okay.
first, yeah.
I think that a big part of it for me is planning time doing things I want to do. So whether that's going for a walk or going for a bike ride, I find it tends to be outside and away from a screen. There's a lot of things I need to do on a screen, and I do enjoy a lot of that, but I also need the time away from the screen. So I'd say getting time, sometimes it's with my family and sometimes it is by myself. Sometimes with its friends and sometimes by myself. That's, I think, one of the big ways that, just like, whether it's listening to a podcast and just going for a walk, but I think that time by myself is actually how I re-energize, I guess, for the things that I want to be doing.
I think in the past, or maybe in the present for some of us, that seems so selfish. It's about me.
Yeah.
And the guilt associated with that.
It's funny because I don't feel guilty about that anymore.
For you.
I used to. And people would ask me about it, like, how do you do this? Like, I do it because I have to. Like, I will lose my mind if I don't make time for myself. And you can see it. I think this really came up with new moms. When I have a friend who has a baby, I say, leave the house and leave the kid with your partner and just get out and they will figure it out. But set that up right off the bat so that you're not the only person that can be reliable. Like, does that make sense? I just always go, get out, make that a part of your life.
And I know, Christy, you've done a lot of work on this for a number of years in really looking at how do you care for yourself. And it goes back to, the pin that I'm wearing. How are we living well? Because if we're not well for ourselves, how are we well for others?
Yeah. And it ties back to, sorry, I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah.
It ties back to the whole idea of the work I do with photography and digital story, with telling with I was there too. If I can show people that I'm there too, like, you recognize that you're a part of your own family story or a part of the story going on around you. And I think that is really a piece of it, but it took me years to figure that out. I'm there. I'm a part of this story too.
Helen, I have a question for you.
Okay. Yes, teacher.
And there are no wrong answers here, of
No.
course. But I asked Christy how she lifts herself up. But I want to know from your perspective, whether it's professional and or personal, how do you lift others? What's one thing that you've done over the past, I'm going to say, week, where you actually lifted somebody up? What did you do? And what was the impact? How did you lift somebody else up? What did you do? And what was the impact?
So, for me, I'm all about the personal growth versus the professional growth, which I think that's why the three of us work so well together, because it's all in one, but it's different. So I'm making a whole bunch of notes as I was listening.
I know, I saw you writing frantically.
Yeah, I was like, seriously, my brain. So one of the things is I lift up my granddaughters. We had, I bought those little tree houses. I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook, and they're painting. So they're 2 and 4. And just to watch them so intent on, they're so focused on these beautiful little tree houses. I mean, Ellie can barely hold her pen, and she's doing these beautiful, and and I'm sitting there and I'm lifting them up by telling them, oh my gosh, you are an incredible painter. I love your colors that you've chosen. And so, and in a weird way, if you know my story, I'm also lifting up my little Helen. And when it comes down to what Christy was saying, like, I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's in my book. But I remember asking my mom one time something, and she was very negative response. And so a lot of times when I'm lifting my granddaughters and others, it's like, just be kind. You don't need to say, hey, you went out of the lines. Hey, you don't mix these colors together. Hey, you don't. It's like, just be nice. And I think that comes back to where you have to be nice to yourself. I don't know about you guys. I'm pretty sure, because we're all women, but it's like I can beat the hell out of myself about something, right? And then I just go down to these depths of despair and all the little bit of a fatalist sometimes. And I'll stay there for a while and I'll talk about it. And I call it wallowing in poo, but I don't stay there long because there's no point. And I've learned that over myself. So I think just by lifting up, maybe through my own actions and trying to be positive and, trying to, like, and Christy was saying to go outside, I do my lift up for myself so I can do it for others. But I run. Sometimes I sit in my couch for 3 hours and I don't feel guilty. And like you said earlier, I used to feel like, oh my God, get off your couch. Life's too short. If you want to sit on your couch, sit on your damn couch, right? So I think in the last week, for sure, when I spent that time with my granddaughter, and I know my granddaughters, and I remember with the oldest one, she said, yeah, do you have to go? Can you stay for 2 hours longer? So I know that the experience is positive with her.
Well, it's interesting, that emotional commitment to that task not only lifts your granddaughters up, but from your conversation and how your face just lit up when you talked about that, it lifts you up as well. And here's the other thing that I've noticed. So my associate and I are kind of facilitating this session this evening. Actually, and my associate is Dean, my husband, who's been an educator, an outstanding educator for a number of years.
I'm going to start calling him your associate.
Yes, he is my associate. And a damn good one at that. But we talked about the impact that lifting others up makes, but also, in some of the research that we've done, really thinking about what are we modeling. And I'm thinking about your grandkids right now. What are you modeling for them as they see you getting involved in this task? And Christy, back to what are you modeling for your 2 boys and your husband who has a huge job, like that this is important because I need to take care of me. And for years, we've underestimated that wellness piece. And many of the jurisdictions that I'm working with have actually put in a goal that is a priority to take a look at mental health and mental wellness. So it's interesting. Ladies, I think I want to turn this to you in a second. What question might you have for me? In looking at this work, I'm offering this series. What question?
I have a question for you. So we could turn it on and say, how do you lift, and when do you know that it's successful, and why do you do it? You know, we were talking before we started recording. Is your intention always altruistic? Sometimes it's not.
Wait, I also want to jump in before she answers, because this is the lift for you. Anytime that I've been, so I did your series where we met together in Edmonton with other leaders in education. And I also did this workshop at the Banff Center. It is so many little things. It's her awareness of space and her welcome when she brings people in. It's her making sure to share information ahead of time and after the fact that makes you know that you're a part of this. And like, it is really the collaboration and the opportunity to voice your thoughts with smaller groups and then back with larger groups. But like, I feel like she's tearing up.
Yeah, I do too, because, you know, and to follow that up, Christy, on a personal level with Mary, she went to unbelievable lengths in Greece to find my relatives, to spend time with them. Like, she really does make you feel like you're such a part of her world, and there's no gain for her other than she's just this lovely human being.
Okay, enough.
Okay. See, you ever
You know, I have had the good fortune.
It's true.
Thank you. And two of you are on the screen right now, but to be with incredible individuals who actually have impacted my life at so many levels. And the question, you know, what impact do we make as a lift leader, or the opposite? What impact do we make as a drop leader? Somebody who doesn't lift but drops. And, you know, Helen, I love that question that you posed in a very short kind of narrative. I was working with a client yesterday in a school, and she walked into the room, hadn't really met her before. And I went, I know you. And she says, of course you do. 22 years ago, I was a consultant, and I was doing an observation in her classroom. She was an educational assistant. She was working with a teacher. We were working with a student, and she blew my mind. I mean, the teacher was great. We worked through strategies, but this educational assistant, I kind of went, oh my God. Anyway, so we kind of went through the case conference, and I pulled her aside before I left, and I said, I really think you need to become a teacher, because here are the things that I noticed about you. Unaware of what I was saying and what I was doing 22 years ago. So yesterday, when she walked into the room, she looked at me, she said, can I give you a hug? And I went, sure. I was kind of a little tentative. She said, you inspired me to be the teacher that I am today. I get goosebumps about it. So she went, got her education from that comment that I had made that I was so unintentional about, and attended many of my series. And she kind of lifted off some of the things that she attended. She goes, if it wasn't for you making that comment, I wouldn't be a teacher today. So she went from an educational assistant to 22 years later, an amazing teacher who's working with a group of interaction students in one of the schools that I'm working with. And I kind of went, I scared myself, actually. I thanked her, and it was one big love in. And then I said to myself, oh my God, that could have gone so bad in a different way. Mm-hmm. What we say matters. What we, you know, and so that's my story in looking at, we make a difference.
And whether you know it or not, to that point, you know, I mean, that's why you always have to be so careful. And you know, it's like, as a parent or as a person to yourself, listen to how you speak to yourself. You can really just your confidence, or you can say, hey, I can do this. Like, you're always having these mental moments of talking to yourself, I think. Well, I do, unless I'm crazy. I'm assuming everyone else does. I don't know. Uh-oh. Yeah. But it's true. And so that goes to my question about what are the intentions when you're lifting up. Are you doing that to make yourself feel better, or do you really want to be that person who really makes a difference in someone's life?
Mm-hmm. Christy, what are you thinking? I can see those wheels spinning.
I was just thinking a couple of things come up for me about like digital storytelling and photography and just and teaching. I have had students walk up to me and as they've grown up and come back and, oh, you made a difference. And one of the things that actually comes up, I made a digital story called Hugs and Bugs. And it is about spending time with my kids, talking about things that went well in their day and things that were a challenge. But this is also something I did in my classroom. And once a week, my health don't tell people, but curriculum sometimes in health is meh. So every week I had hugs and bugs time, whether I taught grade 1, whether I taught grade 7, and we would circle up on the carpet or with our chairs, and we would go around the circle and talk about one positive thing. Could be school, could be home, could be I like what I'm wearing. It didn't matter. It didn't have to be big, but it had to be positive. And we would go all the way around the circle, and then we'd go around one more time, and kids had a chance to talk about something that was a challenge. And what ended up happening was lots of kids passed on the challenge. You didn't have to talk about something harder, but kids would start problem solving for each other, and we'd figure out different strategies. But that is the thing that kids always came back to me. If they saw me later on or I'd moved schools, it was always hugs and bugs that they remembered. And I think that really speaks to just how much we need that, and how there's not a lot of space for that. Also, Maverick, my youngest son, that is like, Mom, can we do questions tonight? That is his go-to. It's our time together to talk about our day and like focus on the positive and work through some problems. But that one, and then getting to do that, like I just started a digital storytelling workshop at Arts Place on Monday, and it's bringing a group of people together to talk about sometimes hard stories, but finding positive and supporting each other as we figure out how to tell those stories. October 25th, we're doing a digital story screening, and that is literally 3 people who have created a digital story, getting to showcase them and having people give them like just this kind of love and feeling about like, wow, I didn't know that about you, or thank you for sharing that, and this is what resonated with me out of your story. And I think that message we don't often hear back. You can put a story out there, but unless you have an audience that you are with, you are not going to hear how much it has an impact. And I think that is actually part of my favorite part about people sharing their stories, is that they do get feedback about it. And I don't think people realize how impactful that is.
Yeah, and I think too is when you don't know what someone else is carrying, and quite often when you're dealing with situations, especially if you're grieving something, you think you're alone. You really do feel intensely, like, oh my God, I'm all by myself on this island. Nobody understands how I feel. Well, that might be true to a certain degree. Nobody really knows how someone else is processing or whatever. But when you're being able to tell that story and it normalizes it, that's when I know whenever I'm speaking about my book and stuff, people come forward and tell me these stories. You're like, oh my gosh, right? So that's a lifting experience.
Yeah. It's just making space for people.
Yeah. And not judging, which is the most important. Yeah.
Thank you for the segue, ladies, because you kind of know, where are we going to fit all this in? So, Helen, your level of experience with the counseling component and your lived experience really reminds me of you. Both of you are some incredible listeners who lift, whether it's intentional or unintentional. But we have for you a very self-directed document that's called "Listening as a Critical Leadership Experience and Skill." And we've co-constructed a checklist for you. We're not going to read this to you. It's pretty straightforward, but we talk about some key elements of what great leaders do. And we all lead from where we stand. You've heard this from us over and over again, but we listen without judgment. We invest the time to listen without formulating a response. So we've come up with almost 12 things. It's almost a bit of a checklist. But you have a task that we want you to think about, whether it's that task that you do within your home, with your family members, or in the workplace. Here are the things that we want you to reflect on. So we've got a little cheat sheet for you. Reflect on the task. Check off 1 or 2 areas that you wish to focus on. Highlight an area that you're really strong at. And then how might you use this process to enhance your leadership listening skills? And we'd like to hear back from you. So that'll be a part of your takeaway.
And can I just add that
for
people that are listening maybe to a recording of this and they don't actually have access to like, hey, we send this in our takeaway email, but this might happen later for people. If this is something that you would like to see, email us, find us. We're on Instagram, Leading Through Stories. Our email is connected below through the show notes, and we can send this. So you could just say, I'd like the listening as a critical leadership skills sheet, and I can get it sent to you. So just know that even though you might not be on live today, that you can get that later on.
Thank you, Christy. And if you want to say, hey, Christy, Mary, and Helen, can we talk through how you work through this? we will have a glass of wine and a Zoom link with you, and we can actually share our experiences with this. The second takeaway item for you is 5 simple intentions. And, Dean, my associate for this leadership series, actually found that. And it's lift your leadership in 5 days. So there are very specific strategies that this document will give you. So number 1 is, grow your leadership on Monday. And it gives you some 3 or 4 things to consider. We're co-constructing that. Okay, it's kind of cat's out of the bag. Is that the terminology?
Yep, that's it.
Those of you who are attending tonight, you're going to be involved in this process. But another document that might help you in becoming an even better lift leader. It's about self-reflective practice. Are you investing the time to think about 2 questions, as we think about closing today? Number 1, your call to action. Think about a friend, think about a neighbor, think about maybe somebody who is in need, and we can speak from experience. How are you going to connect that individual to lift them up?
And 2 words that I use for coaching always in my mind is to stay curious. So stay very open-minded. I love that. Yeah. Beautiful, Mary.
So then,
Oh,
Mary, I'm pulling this up at the same time. You have 2 spots left in your leadership series that is running tonight. It is in Edmonton and it is in person. There's no virtual option, right?
There's no virtual option, sorry.
That's okay. So I will put this in the takeaways in case you have been on the fence or you just didn't hear about it and you'd like to sign up. And Mary, you run something similar each year. So let's say somebody completely misses this opportunity. Keep your eyes out. Sign up for your newsletter because that's where you share with people. You do a monthly message, right? Will you tell people about that?
Every 2 months now, because I thought monthly was people were inundated. And now somebody says, no, I want them monthly. So anyway, I'm going back and forth on that. So yes, thank you, Christy. If you are interested in my monthly message, a couple of tools, a couple of strategies, some inspiration and some content regarding my work, let us know for sure. And we would get that out to you.
Yeah. So, and through your website might be an easy way for people to contact regardless to get on that newsletter list. All right. Well, Mary, thank you for sharing all this work today with us. I am really excited that we're doing it this way this year because I think I've loved having the conversations with each of you, but this season 2, we're doing a guest and then focusing on the work that each of us does in turn. So right now it was Mary. We'll have a guest next month. November 16th is our next episode, and we'll be announcing that guest closer to the date. Following that in December will be a focus on Helen's work, and then we'll have a guest. So that's just kind of the way the season 2 is working out. But thank you for sharing the work that you do with us.
Wouldn't it be fun if you showed, I was going to say, wouldn't it be fun if you showed our very first episode at some point just to see how slick we are? Oh, beautiful pins too, Mary.
All of you online today will be receiving one of these. So it is your reminder to wear daily. How are you living well, to lead well? And who are you lifting and who are your lifters?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but a couple times today I was looking down because I have my Live Well, Lead Well calendar sitting. This is one from last January. And it just, I don't know, there's great little reminders on it. Do you have a new one?
I do. Did I not send that to you ladies? Oh my God. Okay.
Oh,
you might have, but I don't have it with the takeaways. So maybe we'll send that one out with the takeaways as well.
Lovely.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, let's say goodbye because we can talk forever.
Love you guys. Thank you so much. Continue to lift those around you to make this world a better place.
I love it.